When Ibn Battuta left Tangier in 1325, he could never have known his journey was to last a quarter of a century, taking in every corner of the world. When he finally returned to his hometown, he found his parents were dead and his beloved Muslim empire under threat from European invaders. He wrote, "The memory of my homeland moved me, affection for my people and friends, and love for my country, which for me is far better than all others. I sailed in a small vessel belonging to a Tunisian. I reached the city of Taza, where I learned that my mother had died of the plague. I sought to visit my mother's grave in Tangier, and visited it." Ibn Battuta, now a man of 45 years old, had finally reached home. He did not stay long. Just across the water, Gibraltar was under siege from the Spanish king Alfonso XI. He joined up with a band of warriors to defend the mountain fortress and fight in what he described as the Holy War, the frontier fighting in Andalus.
Every day, hundreds of passenger ferries and cargo ships crisscross the Straits of Gibraltar. As the gateway from Europe to Africa, it's a vital shipping channel. And throughout history, whoever controlled the Rock of Gibraltar controlled the Straits of Gibraltar. Perhaps that's why it's been besieged 15 times over the centuries.
There were no ferries in 1350 when Ibn Battuta set out on his jihad. He would have made the crossing on a small Moroccan vessel, packed with Muslim warriors eager to repel the Spanish forces. But when he reached the rock, he found that there was no war, only death. The Spanish king and much of his army had been killed by the deadliest pandemic the world has ever known, the Black Death. Camilo Alvarez is a scholar of medieval medicine and an expert on the plague that killed 100 million people worldwide.
La peste negra se conoce con este nombre a una gran epidemia que arrasó prácticamente toda Europa.
The Black Death was the name for an epidemic that devastated Europe between 1347 and 1400. It was called the Black Death because the corpses of its victims were blackened by the damage it caused.
When Ibn Battuta arrived in Gibraltar in 1350, what would he have seen?
We can imagine the atmosphere in the streets back then would have been awful. The air would have been thick with smoke from fumigation. There would be corpses piled up in the streets, people dragging bodies from their houses, screaming everywhere. It would have been an appalling experience for him in Gibraltar, although he had experienced it before in other affected cities.
How did people try to cure the plague?
Above all, they tried to purify the air. They believed the disease was transmitted through the air. For example, there are portraits of Christian doctors from the period who wore masks that resembled a penguin's beak. They packed the beak with aromatic herbs so that doctors who were in contact with plague victims could breathe purer air. Groups of flagellants appeared, people who would publicly flog themselves in the towns as penitents because they considered all this a punishment from God.
These cures proved futile. The disease was transmitted by fleas which lived on black rats. And for Gibraltar, like so many other towns and cities worldwide, the consequences were devastating. It's unimaginable to think that one disease could have wiped out half of Europe's population, but not even the Black Death could tame Ibn Battuta's wanderlust. So after the Christian siege of Gibraltar collapsed, instead of heading home to Tangier, locking his door and putting his feet up, he decided to make the most of where he was, and of course he went on holiday.